Alright, today we're going to analyze O Ewigkeit, du Donnerwort, which quite comically translates to O Eternity, you Thunder Word, which I think is quite funny. Alright, so I just like to put this out there sometimes. The reason we analyze pieces is if we want to do something that we hear and we're like, oh, that's cool. Analysis is what we do to figure out what that was so that we can either use it when writing our own pieces or when performing, if we're like improvising a section, something like that. We have these sounds in our ears and we know from analyzing them exactly what's happening. I use Krita for analysis, which is this painting software that you see. It is completely free. I like to do it online, or not online, on a computer, because you can have different layers, which allows you to like see just the harmonic analysis, just the phrases, just this, without just having so many markings on a piece of paper that it gets difficult to understand what you're looking at. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into it. So first, let's create a layer and call it Harmony. I try to put all of the analysis layers below the layer with the score on it, which I should probably call score, just to keep us from getting confused later. And I'll show you why when we get to things like non-chord tones. But for now, let's start our analysis. First things first, let's grab the color we're going to use. I'm going to use orange. I'm going to set the size to 5, because I think that should give us, yeah, that'll make it easy. So, let's look at what key we're in. I see one flat, so we're probably in F major or D minor. It begins and ends on an F major chord, so it's probably an F major. I also like to try to take note of any areas I see where there is like a lot of chromaticism, which hints there might be a modulation or something like that. Right now I'm not seeing anything. There's a accidental, but it's just one. Okay, here's a couple. So we're going to put a star here, and that tells us that, you know, there's probably going to be a modulation or something going on here. And then by here we have none, except for this turning it back flat, or back natural. So, let's just go for it. We have F major, so this is a 1. And another 1. And we have E, G, B flat, so that's a 7. But since it's over G, it's a 7 in first inversion. And then we have another 1, but this is also inverted because it's over A instead of F. We have 1. B flat major, this is a 4. 5, 1. Oh my gosh, look at that beautiful 4, 5, 1. Gorgeous. Alright, here we go again. 1. And then this looks like a 6. This looks fun. Okay, we have G, B flat, and D up here, so that'd be G minor. And the C throws us off, but here's a B flat, which fits into G minor. So I'm gonna call this G minor in first inversion and say that that C is going to be a passing tone between that D and that B flat. It's just accented. Alright, and now we've got another confusing one. However, I would say this is quite simply a 1-6. This G is a suspension held over from here that then resolves over here, but by the time it resolves we actually change to 6 instead of 1, but there you go. And then here we go again. We're back at that 7 figure that we had earlier. It's not really a figure, it's just a single chord, but you know. Then we have a 1-6. Then we've got 5. Look how obnoxiously large this 6 is compared to the 1. But you know what? I'm just going to leave it. Who cares? This was that single accidental that we saw earlier, so it's probably tonicizing D, because that's an A major. So let's look. Yep, this is a D minor with a suspension. So that's 6. So this is 5 in first inversion of 6. Then here we have the exact same chord. Okay, but now we're just inverted, so there we go. Boom, perfect. And here we have this is 2. Back to 6. G. We have G, B flat, D, and F. So we could just call that a 2-7. But we have this really big Fa, Sol, Do in the bass here. Okay, so just for consistency, we're going to call this a 2, and then it's a 2-7 in first inversion. So we're going to call this a 2-6-5. However, were we doing something like a functional analysis, I would not call this the parallel of the subdominant. I would simply call this the subdominant 4 with a character dissonance of the 6th up here. Well, the 6th of the chord, the 2nd of the scale. Alright, so now we've got 5 and 1. Gorgeous. Okay, we're back to 1. Who would have thought? Who in their right mind would think that a chorale would start on 1? Okay. This is also the star. In case you didn't know, this is also, in fact, this star. Okay. So that means we're getting into something here. There's a lot of accidentals. So usually the best way to look at something that seems like it could be a modulation is to see where it ends. So this ends on 2 in G minor. So this is a 5-7 of G. And this is also a 5 just with a suspension. And this is... Okay, so this is really starting to look like we're in G minor through here. So we're actually going to go ahead and call this 1 and assume that we modulate somewhere through here. Okay, so then if we say that's G minor, then this is 5-7. And this is 5. And then this is also 5. Well, no. What do you want to call this? B, D, F sharp. Okay, so it's not technically 5. Let's come back to it. Okay. This we have C sharp, E, G, B flat. Okay, so it looks like the C sharp is going up to the D and the B flat is going down to the A. That's looking like some kind of a cadence. So this is probably, because C sharp also does not fit into G minor. So this is probably like a 5 of 5, well, 7 of 5 because we have C sharp. So we're going to call this 7. And we have a fully diminished one, 7 of 5 in G minor. Alright, so now what's this? Okay. So we have D, D, F sharp, B. B flat. Ooh. Okay, so this is an augmented chord. Am I correct in saying that? Yes, I am. Fantastic. Okay. So technically this is an augmented chord. Let's see what it's doing. So we have... If we're getting into G minor from F, here we have F sharp, and that gives us a leading tone. And here we have D, which is the 5. So that gives us a pretty good indication that this is probably some kind of a dominant chord. Then this B flat is really what's throwing us off here. So there are a lot of things we could do. What I'm tempted to say is that this B flat is really just like a neighbor tone of this A, but then it doesn't go back down to the A. It just stays on the B flat. What else do we have here? If we were going to label this as like in the most objectively correct way that we could, we would either have to say that it is F sharp augmented, B flat augmented, or D augmented, because since they're augmented, they're all the same. There's only so many augmented chords. So, given that D is in the bass and usually you try to double the root as much as you can, I'm going to say that this is D augmented, and D is 5, so this would be 5 augmented. Okay. I don't think that is the best way to explain what's really going on here. However, I'd say it's close. The fact that it's labeled as 5 gives us the information that we really need here, which is that this is a dominant chord, and this is a dominant chord, and this is the dominant of that dominant. So we have 5, 5 of 5, 5. So you could say that this is like, as I was saying earlier with the neighbor tones, you could say that this is a neighbor tone figure here with A, B flat, A. You could say something like that, which I'd buy it. Okay, I'd say let's move on from here because I think we have it labeled. We've talked about like 3 different ways that you could understand what's going on here. What I like the most is the one we just talked about, which is that this B flat is really just a neighbor tone figure of these A's on either side of them. So now let's look at these 2 chords here at the beginning. Well, not at the beginning. Almost at the beginning of the phrase. So, this is a 7 in the key of F. And as of here, we are still in F. So we're going to call this 7. And this is where we seem to be modulating, because E flat is the first chord that is not in F major. First note that is not in F major. So, if we had something like a pivot chord here, then we would need to say that this right here is the pivot chord. However, that does not work because E flat, B, G does not fit into G minor at all, because neither of these are flat, not even close. Okay. Oh wait, I lied. This is a B flat, duh. Okay, then we might be able to get away with that, because if we say melodic minor and you say that this is La, we could get away with it. What I think is going on here is this bass motion is really telling us what's going on. What I think is going on, that's not a good way to say that. What I think is going on here is this F, E, E flat, D, C sharp, D, D, G. I think that motion is really what we're going for. This chromatic scale downwards that kind of wraps us around the 5 in our new key and then resolves down to 1. So I would say this is more linear than vertical. So, but we do have to name it something vertically. What do we have as a stack of thirds? We have A, C, E flat, G. So we have A half diminished 7. Absolutely gorgeous. So, in F minor, we would call that'd be 3 because A, but I don't think that's right. I think we need to think about this A as it is in G minor. So it's 2, which makes a whole lot of sense. 2 half diminished. And then we have 4. So close. 4, 3 in G minor. So that would mean that this chord would be the pivot chord, which is what you would expect in this type of writing, is a pivot chord modulation. However, that's definitely not what we have. I would say that we have a chromatic modulation with just this E going down to the E flat to give us a chord in the new key, whereas all the other pitches are in the old key and the new key. So let's mark that this is in G minor. It's beautiful. Okay. I also don't think I marked that we were in F major at the beginning, so let's do that too. F major. Now we can probably get rid of this star. Ugh. I hope that you guys can hear this pen on the tablet. Okay, so now we're getting close to the end. I'm gonna go ahead and mark this as 1. Ah, gotta change colors back. 1. Okay, so we have, this looks very much like F major. So 1, 6, but we have to get back into F major somewhere, so what do we have here? Yep, and this is a 4, 5, 6, 1. I'd say that this is not a new chord, these are all just passing tones, because we have this very clear like 1, 2, 3, 4, and those align with the chords. So I don't think there's another chord here. Well, there is another chord here, but I don't think that's important for the harmonic structure. And then we have 5, 5, 1. If you want to be technical, there's a 7 there. Okay, so now let's go up here and figure out how we get back into F. This one's actually a lot easier than this one over here, because I would say that this is a pidget. I would say that this is a pivot chord modulation because we are in F major now. And this G minor works perfectly in F major just as the 2 chord. So I'm gonna get rid of all of that and make that not look like some weird monstrosity that covers up half the notes. Don't you hate when that happens? Okay, so zoom in to make life a tad bit easier. Call this 1, 2, F major. Whoa, how'd that happen? Alright, we now have F major. And I would say that is a harmonic analysis. Next, we're going to look at non-chord tones, which are always fun. So let's create a new layer for those and call it just NCT for short, non-chord tones. Okay, so I'm going to hide this harmony layer so that we don't have to look at it a ton right now. Well, no, actually, we need it. We very much need the harmony layer to understand which chords which notes are our non-chord tones. Okay. So first let's go over my system. I use a red circle for a passing tone, a blue triangle for neighbor tones, a green highlight for suspensions, a purple line above the notes for anticipations, and a yellow circle circling both notes for an appoggiatura. Okay, so let's see what we have. And again, this layer is behind the score because I want to be able to see the full note. If I put it above the score, then it can get difficult to understand, like, okay, what note is that? You might understand that it's a G because you just saw me draw the circle. But if there's a bunch of these on a piece of paper like this, it gets very difficult to understand what's what. So, but if you put it under the score, then suddenly it gets a whole lot easier to see what's going on. So now, guess what? That's passing tone. Let's see what other ones we can find. Here's a B flat, goes between the A and the C there. This looks like a passing tone, but it's just a chord leap. Here is a passing tone. These are probably passing tones. So we have F, G, F, E, F, G, A, F, E, D. Yes, they are both passing tones. Again. And again. Back at it again with the passing tones. They're just everywhere. Look at this. This is ridiculous. So, basically, most places where you see this kind of a figure, yo, I screwed up. This is not a passing tone. And then this one is. And this one is. So what we're starting to see is that most places that there are eighth notes, we have a passing tone. And here's one here. And da-da-dum, da-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum. Oh, I'm also thinking we may have made a mistake back there. Because I think I marked one that I didn't think was one. Yep, here it is. I screwed up right here. Because this B flat is not the passing tone. This passing tone is actually this C here. Because we labeled this as a G minor in first inversion. So this B flat is actually in the chord and the C is not. The C lies between the D in the 6 and the B flat in the 2. So this is actually our passing tone. So it's different than all the other ones we've seen on this page. Alright, let's keep going. We're getting pretty close to the end now. Again, as I said earlier, these are all just passing tones. And then this looks like a passing tone, but it is actually just adding the 7th to the chord. So I'm not going to circle that one. Here we have a chordal leap, and here we have a passing tone. Beautiful. Okay. There are actually no neighbor tones that we've seen so far. So, now let's go through and look at a couple of these areas that seem suspiciously like suspensions. You're welcome. Anywhere where there's these slurs, well, they're not slurs. Anywhere where there's these ties, we can expect there's probably a suspension hidden somewhere. So I'm gonna make this a bit larger. My pen, well, that's maybe a little too large. This is 30. We're actually going to go down to 20. That's nice. Okay. Because the idea is I want to highlight, or underlight, I guess might be the term, to put a marking as if it were a highlight, except it's under the notes. So like this. This G is a suspension held over from this G minor chord that resolves to this F in this 1 and 6 chord here. So we're going to take that one and highlight it like that. That F is then suspended over to this E diminished chord. So now we have that. See where else there are. This E is tied to something. I bet it's probably a suspension, so let's see. Yes, it is tied to this E over here, which resolves down to this D in D minor. There we go. Probably the same with this F. Yep, F is tied over, resolves down to this E. Actually, this is interesting here, because we labeled this as a 2-6-5, which would mean that this F is not a dissonance, because F is in G minor 7. However, this suspension here shows us that it's being treated as if it were dissonant. So, perhaps, let's look at what we've got here. So, this is a 2-5-1, however a strong 4-5-1 is in the bass. If this were going to be a 4, we could not have this G, and we would need just the F. However, the F is the note being treated as the dissonance. So, we know for sure that this is 5. I think we can all agree that this is definitely a 5. I would say, let's go ahead and let's leave this marked as a suspension. Because I think that kind of do, ti, sol motion is important here. I was going to say do, ti, do, but now the alto actually goes down. But you know, 4-part writing. So, I would say let's leave this marked as a suspension, and I'd say let's get rid of... I also just realized I put hominy over here instead of harmony. I'll fix that real fast, don't mind me. Okay, so I'd say let's get rid of this and just call this a 1 or a 2, 6. There we go. That's what I'm going to call it. Because I think this motion here is intended to act as a suspension rather than a dissonance that is built into the chord. Plus, it makes more sense stylistically at this time period. So, what else do we have? And one here. That's the wrong color. Gotta switch back to this beautiful green. There we go. There are our suspensions. Oh no, we have a whole nother system to go. Whoa. Let's see what we've got down here. There's one right here. This F goes down to E, bringing back that good do, ti, sol. Okay. Just to talk about process for a second. When I am doing a harmonic analysis, I go ahead and look for what kind of non-chord tones we're looking at, because you have to consider the pitches you see to figure out what chord you have, so you can often just look at something and go, yo, that G is not in my F major, so it's going to be a non-chord tone of some type. Look at the next chord, C, oh, that's also an F major, so that's probably a passing tone. So I'm not making a super strict list in my head, but I'm getting my bearings of what's in front of me when doing the harmonic analysis, so that I understand, so that I'm going into the non-chord tone analysis with kind of a roadmap of what to expect. I was noting suspensions while I was looking at the harmonic analysis, so that I was prepared for what to do when it came time to look at non-chord tones. Now, I do not see any appoggiaturas, anticipations, or neighbor tones in this piece, so that's not the world we're looking at. The last thing I want to look at are phrases. So, let's make another layer called phrases. Now, phrases and harmony do tend to go together hand in hand because phrases end usually at cadences. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. Anywhere where you see a strong 5-1, probably the end of a phrase. So I mark these with, let's go back over here to my sketch pad. If I use a dark blue line, well, I actually do not want this to be a paint layer like the other ones, so I'm going to get rid of it. I use a vector layer for these because I use lines that I can move and change the size and shape of as I need. So, phrases. Now my method, for some people use slurs, but my method is to... Some people put large phrase markings as arcs over the top of phrases. I do not like to do that, especially because I think it looks messy in something like this. So what I do is I like to mark the phrases with a line, like this. This means the end of a phrase. So anywhere in this kind of writing, anywhere where there's a fermata, that's the end of a phrase. We can be incredibly confident with that. So for the end of a phrase, I like to select my line and style it style it like this, with kind of big dashes. And that means that this is the end of a phrase. Now, I'm just going to copy paste this around and put it at the end of the other phrases. So here we have, this one's different because it ends on a half cadence, but again, that fermata really clues us into what we're talking about. Here we do not have a fermata, but we're starting to see a pattern here. You have a pickup, a whole bar, and then it ends on beat 3. Pickup, whole bar, ends on beat 3. Pickup, whole bar, beat 3. So we're going to say that's the same thing here, especially because we have 4, 5, 1 in the bass. Now, and then there's another one here. And big surprise, one at the end of the piece. So now, when you're looking at phrases, the end isn't the only thing that matters. You also need to look at, or we also need to look at the high point of the phrase. Each phrase builds to something and then relaxes from something in most Western music. Let's just look at the first phrase here. I'm going to say this is do. Do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol, la, ti, do. I can lean into any note in that phrase. However, there's going to be one that really sticks out as like, this is where the phrase is going. This is why this phrase exists. And for me, I think it is this D in the 4 chord here. Let me show you why. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol, la, ti, do. If I lean into the la, it feels really good to be like, here it is, and then back off on the last 2 notes. And that gives us a really satisfying phrase. This is all very subjective stuff. Some people might say you should push through to the end on the F. That'll work. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol, la, ti, do. I just don't think that gives you a lot to go from there. Because then it's like, alright, there was your big note, and now we have to come back in with do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol, fa, mi, re. If you build up to the D, back off, then you have this really nice, you're in a really nice place to pick up then with the next phrase. So, I'm going to grab this line and put it right here next to this D, and I'm going to change its color as well. We're going to go with a medium brown. Fun fact, this is all in my Theory in 3 palette on Krita. You're welcome. Light brown. And then this one I like to change to the smaller dashes, just to make it a bit clearer that this is very different from what we're looking at there. And I bring it within the staff, instead of bridging outside. Now, I'm seeing similar motion here with this phrase. And given that we talked a second ago about how these phrases are really all a pickup, a bar, and then it ends on 3, it makes sense for the downbeat of that last bar to be the high point of the phrase. So let's look at this one. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re. Same kind of effect there. We get to go through it, we build up to the B flat, and then we relax on the A and G. So let's grab that and put one there as well. See, lots of patterns everywhere. I bet you this is going to be the exact same, so let's go ahead and just put it here next to this G. And rather than y'all having to listen to my voice again, we're just going to say that this is correct. At least for my ears. Some people might have different ideas, but I would say that most people are going to agree that this is where they hear kind of the point of the phrase. Now. Ah, I pasted it up there. Ah! Alright, so then one here. And then there's one more in this last phrase. Now this last phrase is quite different. This last phrase gives us a very different experience because we build up to a high note and then jump down quite a ways. So some people might say you should build to this high note and then kind of relax on this downward fall away. I think it actually is far more satisfying to build up through the high note and through to this G here and then fall off. So let's say do, sol, sol, la, ti, do, mi, re, do. It feels good to really lean into the G here rather than saying that this F is the end, because otherwise you have sol, la, ti, do, mi, re, do. And that's kind of it. If you follow that energy through the F down to this G, then that's a really nice phrase. So I think that's really what Bach was going for here. And lo and behold, we now have a harmonic analysis, a non-chord tone analysis, and a phrasal analysis of this piece. And I'd say that's pretty cool. So now, to bring it back to where we started with, why do we analyze music? I'm going to write some stuff over on the right side of this page. Let's see what kind of world this piece inhabits. I'm seeing very simple harmonies, just 1, 7, 4, 5, 1, then a 6, 2. We're very diatonic. There's nothing crazy here. Obviously no like late Romantic harmony because Bach was not exactly in the Romantic era. We have a modulation here that has one very clean traditional pivot chord modulation, but begins with something a little bit spicier than that. So I would say we have relatively, we'll change the color to black. We have, and say we have diatonic harmonies. There we go. Diatonic hair. Perfect. So, we have diatonic harmonies. We have clean modulations. I'm going to call them clean. That's not the word I really want to use, but that's what we're going. That's kind of the idea here. Like, this is a very smooth, maybe that's a better word, smooth modulations. Maybe I should actually just make this bigger so that I can actually erase with some conviction. Smooth modulations. And then, non-chord tone wise, we have almost all passing tones. Passing tones and suspensions. And phrase wise, we have very, not standard phrases, but all the phrases are the same. So we kind of have cookie cutter phrases. Once we introduce the phrase at the beginning, or once we introduce the type of phrase at the beginning, we then are going to follow that kind of metrical rhythm for every phrase after that. With that pickup, one bar, and then a downbeat, which is the high point of the phrase, and then 2 beats to relax it into a fermata that you can hold out till you turn blue. Which is why we mark the line as blue. Okay. I would say that is all. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content, or if you want different content, let me know that too, and I will try my best to do that for you. Alright, have a beautiful evening, or if it's not evening, have a beautiful life.